It is several thousand years before the air nomad genocide, and all four nations live in relative peace. Although there hasn't been a war in hundreds of years, tensions are rising. A voracious new disease is targeting Earthbenders, and no one knows how to stop it. As their citizens continue to perish, the Earth Kingdom's royal family, the Dai Longs, become convinced of a conspiracy and begin closing their borders and marshalling their troops. Meanwhile, to the west, the new Air Temple is sparking conflict between the Air Nomads and the Fire Nation. Established with Avatar Oshi's guidance shortly before her disappearance, the tenuous situation has begun to rapidly decay. All dealing with their own problems, no one lends an ear when the Southern Water Tribe pleads for help against encroaching barbarians, save the Northern Water Tribe. However, due to the Earth Kingdom's closed borders, they are unable to provide direct assistance, further increasing tensions. On the brink of war, the world looks for their avatar. Hey everybody, I'm the Jake of all trades, and that was the introduction that I gave to my players at the start of our first official session of game. You can understand how the similarities between that and the original introduction to the show. I set it up to kind of I wanted to establish several different story arcs at the start of the game, so that my players would have different venues that they could possibly explore. Setting up the possibility of a sandbox kind of style game. Things quickly turned out to become much more railroady than that. I'm not proud of it, but it works pretty well. It allows me to create a decent story, and I provide enough freedom within the stories to satisfy my players, so that they aren't wanting for anything. They don't feel like the options have been deprived of them so much as there's something else that needs their attention. But anyway, enough about that. When last we saw our players, they were in an all-v-all melee with each other to determine who was fit to go out on this mercenary-style mission. This whole event was hosted by the Earth Kingdom military in hopes of finding some mercenaries to take care of this problem for the Earth Kingdom. And it turns out that after the melee is done, the game started, and I said, "Halt!" And everybody turned their heads up to see the person who was speaking, who was one General Chu. General Chu is interesting because he was actually written into Fang Yang's backstory. Fang Yang is the Earthbender in our party, and he said that he wanted to be in the military. And they started out at not above first level, a little higher. And so I said, that was all right. That's cool. You spent some time in the military. That's explained some of your levels. And so he was under the command of General Chu, though. And so he had finished his military service, and he was ready to start doing his own thing, kind of find his own path in the world. And this was his first adventure, sort of thing. The other players were there for their own sort of reasons. That was just in Fang's backstory, and I thought I'd mention it because he had taken the effort to actually detail his backstory and name a few figures, such as General Chu. And so General Chu gives them their quest, saying that they have been deemed of satisfactory skill to handle this problem that they are having. It turns out that that voracious new disease that I mentioned is specifically focused around the edges, villages around the Siwang Desert. And in an effort to avoid this disease, there are huge flocks of refugees coming from the Siwang Desert towards Omashu, but also Ba Sing Se. Omashu has sort of hit a capacity point, and so a lot of the overflow is being diverted towards Ba Sing Se. And normally these refugees wouldn't have a problem getting to the city, but getting across the lake of Serpent's Pass has been proven more trouble than they had anticipated. Every time they're sending barges across, they are being attacked by this creature. And I'm pretty sure that's all I said to the players, was that they were being attacked by a creature. But if you're a fan of the series, which I'm guessing you are, you have probably guessed that, Serpent's Pass, they're probably being attacked by this thing right here. And if I've mastered this software as well as I think I have, you should be seeing a picture of a sea serpent from that specific episode of Avatar. I didn't bother to look it up. I probably should have. But I took the picture directly from the episode, and I drew it myself. I did not trace this. I drew this myself, and I used some color pencils to kind of lightly color it in, and I presented it to my players when they had finally gotten out there and were trying to face their foe. It rose from the waters, and then I showed them the picture. But more on that later. They have just been given this quest, though, to try to deal with this creature. And they weren't expressly told how to deal with this creature. And I made sure that when I wrote this encounter that I left a lot of options open. They could simply try to deal as much damage to it as they could and try to knock it unconscious or to kill it. But I also made sure that there was they couldn't get across the Serpent's Pass because the ridgy, spiny mountains are broken by sections of water. And I had sort of taken it as like the Serpent had been maybe carving these channels out for itself so that it could travel between both sides of the lake freely. And so that's how it was. That's how it was also harrying the boats. They couldn't exactly go around it necessarily because it was you could go on either side of the lake, either side of the pass. And so I left it open. I had assumed that they would try to maybe push it or lure it to one side of the lake, and then have a bunch of have the Earthbender pull up some sections of wall across the gaps so that it couldn't get to the other side, and then they would be free to send the barges across. But that's not quite how it turned out, and I'll detail that very shortly. So the players were given their first quest to head outside the city, and I gave them the option to buy some equipment beforehand. But like I said, they weren't starting at first level. They were I think at 5th level when we started, and so most of them had already purchased the equipment that they wanted, and they were ready to go. And so I gave them the option to leave the city on the public transit, which are the trains that you might remember from episodes of Avatar, in Bossing, say, with the Earthbenders like pushing them along and such. Or I gave them the option to fly out on our Airbenders Air Bison. Again, they weren't starting at first level; it was 5th, and so I thought it was appropriate to give my Airbender an Air Bison. And I think that was one of the reasons why I had started them at 5th level, because it made a little more sense for her to have an adult, or at least a large enough Air Bison to accommodate the party's weight. And so they left on an Air Bison, though, and actually, if you'll hold on a moment, I actually, here in some bubble wrap, I have an Air Bison miniature that I had made for game, and I'll try to hold it into the camera here so that they can see. And as you can see, I put quite a bit of work into it. I put a lot of detail into it. It's I really like the show, and I didn't have this pre-made when I ran this session or when I started the game, but after we had been playing for several months, I kind of found the initiative to undertake this project, and as you can see, it turned out pretty well. I'm very satisfied with the level of detail and in the features and everything. That's my Air Bison noise. I'm sorry. I have to do that a lot because there's always an Air Bison hanging around. So yeah, this is just like some quick bake clay that I spent some time working on, trying to sculpt it and mold it, and then I baked it in the oven, and then I bought a few different colored paints, and then I just painted it a few times, a few layers, and I got that. It got it to look like that. I might be showing you guys how to make something similar to that in some later videos down the line. We'll see how much ambition I have. But enough about that. So the party flies on Popo's back out towards Serpent's Pass, where they quickly find the Full Moon's Bay, and they meet with Captain Liu Shan, acting Captain Liu Shan. It turns out the actual captain was killed in a mission to try to kill this beast earlier this morning, and I made sure that as such the entire camp of soldiers was entirely and completely utterly disheartened and demoralized. I wanted to make sure that that was very evident as they were speaking to the captain, to the acting captain, and to the rest of the soldiers. So around the camp, they found soldiers who were just sitting around their fires, not really speaking at all, even though there was 20 some odd people hanging around, including wounded. There wasn't really much noise at all aside from the occasional cough and the crackle of fires. Walking around, the players could see that the soldiers were just staring into their meals, on their tin plates. Many of them not even eating, just kind of stirring their food around slowly. So the players immediately understood that things were not looking good around here, and these people had been, like I said, utterly demoralized. They were feeling shit, and so that was the start of their first session. But speaking with Captain Lushan, he says that this beast is completely unbeatable. It's too powerful. It's utterly unstoppable. And the party's like, oh god, man, this is our first adventure, and he's trying to kill us already, was the sentiment around the table. But I asked them to have a little more faith in me, and we continued. They got an idea of what they were facing, and they got stock of their resources, which it turned out to be was about 4 barges, and oh no, I'm sorry, the beast sunk 4 barges, and it damaged 10 more beyond use, and they haven't even finished tallying all of the dead. But the party quickly takes stock of their resources, which are 3 undamaged barges, and they also have 12 of these soldiers who are benders of different elements. A lot of them are earthbenders, but there's also a few firebenders, a few waterbenders, and a few airbenders. There's been peace in the world for quite some time. The last war was hundreds of years ago, and so there's been lots of time for different benders to kind of migrate and emigrate between nations, or immigrate between nations. And so there's kind of a mix of benders. Firebenders are breeding with airbenders, and waterbenders and earthbenders are migrating and breeding with firebenders, and hanging out in the southern water tribe. And so you find people with different elements, kind of, especially in the Earth Kingdom, because it is so vast and because it's right next to all of the other nations. I wanted to make sure to emphasize that the Earth Kingdom had just a huge variety of benders. And this also made it kind of strange when they began closing their borders. But yeah, enough about that. The party has their resources, and they also had full control of all of the soldiers who were in the area. And this is pretty much because they had been sent by General Chu, directly, and the guy who's in charge isn't even really in charge, and he quickly was willing to defer commandment over to the rest of the party, seeing as they had been sent by the general from the city, and so obviously these are the reinforcements. I think there might have been a bit where he was like, these are the reinforcements they promised they were sending, seriously? And the rest of the party was like, whoa, I mean, come on, this is our first adventure, don't give us too much shit. But anyway, they quickly make up a plan, which I think was for Fang to go out and build a bridge while the rest of the party engaged the Serpent and kept it kind of distracted. That was the first thing the players had asked acting Captain Lushan about. It was like, hey, why don't we just do this? And he was like, oh man, I mean, tried that. But whenever we would try to go out to build a bridge, it would just come up and smash it down and kill a bunch of people. And so we stopped doing that. But I mean, you guys, if you have a better plan, and they were like, shit, well, maybe we should distract it out here while we're trying to build a bridge for the refugees to get across. So Fang took command of the Earthbenders, and everyone else had a few other benders that they had to control and to command as well. And they sailed out on barges the next morning. I think at first light they roused the rest of the soldiers and made out into the lake to face the beast, which they haven't seen yet. I should add. I know you guys have seen it. They haven't seen it yet, so they didn't see it. I made sure to keep it kind of suspenseful too. As the party was rowing out, and they were trying to make noise or do stuff to try to draw its attention. But I had a really good sneak check and stuff, and if I can, I'm gonna post a picture of the stat card over here so that you guys can have an idea of what some of its skills were. It had a pretty decent like stealth check, I'm pretty sure, and so it was really good at avoiding their detection. They also did have a higher perception than I had anticipated, though, and so they ended up spotting it a lot sooner than I had anticipated. But then I had it immediately strike as soon as they had spotted it, and then combat began. Everyone rolled initiative, and we got off to it. The fight lasted little more than a minute, in which time the Serpent had tried crushing the boat as everyone was just bombarding it with blasts of all elements. Sindal used a boost from his firebenders, using some of the rules of this system, which were they were allowed cooperation and allowed aiding others, essentially. And but he misappropriated the system, I found out later, to use a lightning form, which should have been well without of his ability as a 5th level firebender. But he was at the table, and I was like, shit, the numbers add up, so let's do it. And so I let him shoot his lightning blast at the creature, which did quite a hefty amount of damage. And it didn't kill it, though. That was fairly early on, and the rest of the fight carried on. And Pema was providing air support from Popo's back as well, with her airbenders, hurling air blasts at it, I believe, or rocks or what have you. They had special airbending forms that allowed them to propel projectiles at great velocities to cause damage too. So they might have been using some of those to toss rocks or other small things like that at it. It was actually, all in all, it was a really fun battle. Everyone got to do something kind of cool, and I feel like everyone had their little moment to shine. And while everyone was keeping the Serpent distracted, Fang was able to build his bridge across the Serpent's pass with the aid of his other Earthbenders. And that allowed passage for the refugees to make their way across towards Ba Sing Se and towards the Full Moon Bay, where they had a train station waiting essentially for these refugees. But the battle was still going on at this point, and it's actually pretty funny. I think Pema was the one who got the final blow on the beast, because it was fighting to the death. I was kind of rusty at this point. I probably should have had it just swim away after it had taken so much damage, because it's just a wild creature after all. But for a while, a lot of my wild animals are fighting to the death, as I'm sort of getting the hang of it. But so it was fighting to the death, and I'm pretty sure that Pema actually got the last blow on it, though. And this is important because the airbenders this whole time haven't been doing lethal damage. Their air blasts and all of their airbending forms do non-lethal damage. And so when Pema got the final blow on this beast, she actually knocked it unconscious instead of killing it outright. It sank into the water, and I remember making a note of it at the table at that time, being like, oh man, you're doing non-lethal damage. You didn't kill this thing. I'm pretty sure you just knocked it unconscious, and now it's just falling into the water. And the rest of the players were kind of unhappy. One of them was trying to throw ice in or something. The other one was trying to use his fire, and to try to just, when can I do this? It only had 1 hit point left. It literally only had 1 hit point left. But no, I said it got away. It was fine. Knowing this, though, Fang made sure that he created a small underwater passage, I think. Or maybe I suggested it to him, and it was later implemented. But I suggested, I think, a small water passage, below the bridge that extended above the Serpent's Pass. And this small underwater passage would still allow the Serpent to travel between both sides of the lake. And that way he wouldn't be inclined to try to destroy this newly constructed bridge like he might otherwise. So the party was eventually successful. They won. They were pretty stoked about it. It was a good fight, like I said, and they made their way back to Ba Sing Se the next day, feeling pretty good about themselves. And they felt even better when they collected their rewards. And this is actually another rusty GM moment for me, another rusty game master moment. I had written up success parameters for this encounter, so that if they succeeded, by with this many barges intact and this many benders conscious and breathing, then they would get this much more money, over their initial reward of just taking out the sea serpent and fixing the problem. But they didn't lose a single boat. One of them was kind of damaged, but they didn't lose it. It was still able to like sail its way back into port. And they didn't lose a single bender either. And so they had kind of maximized those reward parameters. And I wasn't thinking about it all the way through, and I ended up giving them about 120 gold pieces apiece. Each of them got 120 golds. And you might be thinking like, hey, they're 5th level adventurers. That's not so much money for a 5th level adventurer to have in their pocket. And hey, that's what I was thinking too. But I forgot to take into account that because Avatar has a very kind of low wealth system, if you watch the show and you listen to the kinds of prices that they charge for stuff, it seems that it's about 1/10 your traditional Dungeons and Dragons or Pathfinder game. And so I had said as much. I had said that everything, it's 1/10. If you find something in the book and you want to buy it, look at the price and then divide it by 10. If it's 10 gold pieces, it's only 1 gold piece. If it's 5 gold pieces, it's 5 silver pieces, and down the line. And so, essentially, I had actually given them like 1,200 gold pieces. And that turned out to be sort of like a game breaker. I mean, like in-game, how people do like the currency, like in 1920s currency, this was like $3 million or some shit. Well, in D&D currency classic, this was like a 1,200 GP by conversion. So it was a lot of money, but I wanted to make sure they had a decent bit of coin to start their adventure out, because I didn't know what kind of expenses they might be incurring. I didn't know how heavily they wanted to rely on this money to solve their problems, because in a lot of cases, if you have enough money, a lot of times you can get the problem fixed like that, It's no big deal. But anyway, they had a lot of money. It wasn't that big of a deal. And they were back in Ba Sing Se speaking with General Chu when he awarded them this money. And that was when he gave them their next plot hook. And their next plot hook was this. They had judged that the party is worthy of this task. They're trustworthy. They have deemed themselves worthy to the Earth Kingdom and the royal family by taking care of this sea serpent and allowing these refugees to travel into the city. And so they are being asked to perform this other task, this more secret, confidential task. And this task is to seek out the Avatar. You see, they have been hearing in Ba Sing Se many rumors that Avatar Oshi has been seen in a small Earth Kingdom village called Hun Ro. And it is on the very, right near the western edge of the Earth Kingdom, like that large arm that, extends out. I'll show a picture up here in comparison to Ba Sing Se and Hun Ro and show you just how far it is on the map. It's quite a ways off, and it gave them some time to do some other stuff that we're going to be talking about in later episodes. But for right now, General Chu gave them this diplomatic pass, and I would show you a picture of this, but I'm pretty sure that in one of my later sessions, it had been torn up, and I'll try to remember exactly when that was when it comes up and tell you how it happened. It was pretty funny. A lot of it was me getting sick of them flashing it in my face and being like, oh yeah, we have this diplomatic pass from the Earth Queen that says you got to let us do this or something. And I was just like, I had enough of it, and the character in the game had enough of it as well, and so I just snatched it from him real time and then just shredded it right in front of his face. And I'm pretty sure my players just kind of shrugged their shoulders at that point. And we're just like, well, it lasted us quite a ways, so they weren't too upset about it. But anyway, they get this diplomatic pass, which says that they are to be treated as personal envoys of the Earth Queen, and this was to allow them some sort of some level of accommodation and prestige as they were traveling out and making a name for themselves. So they were kind of comfortable, and this kind of created the feel from the Avatar: The Last Airbender, the first show, where they were traveling around, and as soon as Aang was recognized as the Airbender, they sort of had preferential treatment throughout the Earth Kingdom and the Water Tribes and such. So I wanted to kind of recreate that with this sort of diplomatic pass, while I was determining which of my players would become the Avatar. More on that later. So they're on this quest to go to this village of Hunro and try to find Avatar Oshi. And unbeknownst to them, I had spoken to my girlfriend because my girlfriend had played Avatar Oshi. If you've watched the Session 0 video, you will know about this. Avatar Oshi coming in from the first game where I did this Avatar game. And so I had actually spoken with my girlfriend, and we had decided together that Avatar Oshi was actually deceased. She had died in the Southern Water Tribes some 20-odd years ago, defending it from these barbarians that you heard about in the intro to this video. Spoiler alert, they are not barbarians, they are other people. I will tell you, probably in the next episode if you keep watching, so stick around. I will be detailing the further adventures as my players begin their quest to the village of Hunro. Thanks for listening, and I hope to see you soon.